Virginia's U.S. Senator Tim Kaine brings personal morality into the Trump appointee confirmation hearings. Plus, we'll bring you the top highlights from major battles playing out in the General Assembly right now, including the extremist abortion amendment and efforts to save girls' sports. We'll talk about all this and more from the Family Foundation. I'm Victoria Cobb. Well, welcome to Speak Up Virginia. I'm Victoria Cobb, president of the Family Foundation, and I'm here today. I know you're used to seeing Candy Cushman and I, but I'm here today with Todd, our VP of Government Relations, because poor Candy has lost her voice. And so I get to be your host today, which ought to be interesting. So bear with us a little bit, as I'm probably not as smooth as she is. I like to react to things. I don't like to pose questions. That's a whole different ball game.
The tables have been turned.
We did want to make sure that we had a great podcast, because we're right in the middle of the General Assembly session, so people want to know what's going on. So it seemed only fitting to plug on and get to hear. I know you've already been down there for untold hours already.
Too many to count, really.
I would assume so.
That doesn't include the hours that you put in at home, up until late at night when you're reviewing bills and doing emails. But we have a great team. We have great lobbyists and people on staff that are helping. So it does. We spread the wealth, when it comes to how many hours are being put in.
I will give a confession. I'm always the person that's super happy it's the short session. So if you know, in Virginia, it's every other year we go 45 or 60 days back and forth. And every year when I get to day 45, I'm kind of done. Those last 15 on the longer. So I'll give you that. At least this year, it should be the short version, and you should be at least out a little
Every
earlier.
Day we get closer to the end of session.
Every
but
day.
I'll say it's exciting. There's a lot of fun stories that emerge out of this.
Yeah, it is. It's like a little roller coaster. It's just up and down for 45 days. But anyway, all right. Well, before we get all into that, let me hit one issue that isn't necessarily directly, General Assembly legislative stuff, but I thought it was worth talking about because it is getting some discussion nationally. So in case our viewers missed it, there was an extremely tense exchange between our U.S. Senator Tim Kaine and Trump's nominee Pete Hegseth. So he's in his, he's up for being the defense secretary. And I thought we should just play a clip of that so they can, in case they missed it, they can see what we're going to talk about. So let's play a clip of that.
You acknowledge you acknowledge that you cheated on your wife and that you cheated on the woman by whom you had just fathered a child. You have admitted that.
I will allow your words to speak for themselves.
You're not retracting that today. That's good. I assume that in each of your weddings, you've pledged to be faithful to your wife. You've taken an oath to do that, haven't you?
Senator, as I've acknowledged to everyone in this committee, not a perfect person, not claiming to be.
But no, I just asked a simple question. You've taken an oath like you would take an oath to be Secretary of Defense in all of your weddings to be faithful to your wife. Is that correct?
I have failed in things in my life, and thankfully I'm redeemed by my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
So this was kind of intense to watch because we're not used to, yes, they get drilled pretty hard, but this one was personal. Went straight to the sort of the accountability kinds of questions. And I do think accountability, even for personal behavior, is important. So maybe, I think...
I think we should expect and ask for a high standard for our elected officials and those that are in public office or appointed office in this case, to make sure that they are living out according to a higher standard. And, we recognize when someone has changed their life and they've made the right decision to make things better and all of that. But at the same time, we do want to hold them to a higher standard.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, I think it's important that these things do surface. I don't think they need to be hidden. Light is helpful to everything, and that brings accountability. But I do appreciate that at the end he said, when Pete was sort of responding to the attack, he basically said, I've failed at many things in my life, but I'm thankful for redemption from Jesus, which I thought was, it's great, honestly, even in the hard stuff when his name can be praised and people that don't know the gospel can see. So, in some ways it ended up being a nice moment, even though it was
almost kind of refreshing that there was some humility there.
I thought so. Now I have to note, and I think if we didn't say this, it'd be ridiculous. Each side, each party uses this morality issue when they want to, right? They overlook the morality of the people that they want to accept, and they attack the morality of the people that they want defeated in these kind of confirmation hearings. We've seen this, or presidential nominees. I mean, this goes back to Gary Hart, if you remember the whole scandal with Donna Rice Hughes back in the day. We're on the younger side for that, but there is audience that would remember that, and John Edwards, and there's been a number of scandals that were big enough that actually stopped people from moving forward. These days, it kind of seems like people don't care unless they're trying to take you out, right? I mean,
you're right, though. It happens on both sides. And we want to allow for there to be some acceptance of people changing their lives, while at the same time, let's make sure that they are on the right track, that they can carry out the duties of their position, too, that those things aren't going to cause them to misstep in what they're doing, or not be able to carry out the duties of the job.
Right. Well, I'll give. This is the last thing we'll say about this, and then we'll get to the stuff people really want to hear about, which is session. But I will give Tim Kaine this. If I give him the most charitable intention of what he was doing, it's that marriage actually does matter to him. I'd like to believe that. That would be the best case scenario, that he's saying, look, marriage vows should matter, and I'm trying to bring that to the forefront. Interestingly enough, when Tim Kaine was governor, he actually he was willing to work with us and put someone on a commission we created around the issue of marriage. We were actually trying to strengthen marriage. This goes back a little bit. So I'm going to give him the most charitable, but I'm going to say that each party uses it, and it's possibly just partisan craziness trying to rear their ugly head and get somebody taken out of, going through a confirmation. So at least we're through it at this point, and that exchange is over, and we can move on to
we can move on to the next person they're going to bring in.
Correct. These are all going to be very interesting all the way down the pike. So, let's go into the drama that's here. Let's get back to the Richmond Capitol and the drama that's actually happening here. And of course, the big news is that the Democrats have taken us one step closer to enshrining extreme, unlimited abortion into our Constitution. So, Todd, maybe update us a little bit. It's a constantly moving thing. So update us the best you can about where we are at this moment. Okay. So while we're recording today, which will change.
It will change,
fast.
So, what we can say is it has passed the House of Delegates. So that was passed earlier this week. Now there is a Senate version that has made it through committee, and that's going to be voted on by the time that this is aired. So the Senate will have weighed in on this. Now, as we're talking, they could be putting forward amendments to see if the language could change. So anything could kind of happen on the floor, but our expectation is by this time it will have gone through the Senate, and that means then they cross chambers, and they'll go, the Senate will go to the House, and the House will go to the Senate. So things are moving very rapidly on this.
They certainly accelerated this, as we've talked about before. The House had it done through committee before we even got to session, so it was just sitting on the floor, and even the Senate rushed it right out of committee and onto the floor. So there's some kind of strategy there about getting this done and doing it quickly, which is disappointing because, of course, we had worked to try to help change the mind of some Democrats and get them to not vote on this. So far, unsuccessful. We'll see. I mean, we haven't, as of this recording, Senate has not voted. So we are not fait accompli yet. And of course, it has to go through the General Assembly twice. I just want to remind people that once this goes through both sides, the governor cannot touch it. That's the hard thing for us pro-lifers to kind of take in, is that we are used to at least his ability to veto. Yeah. We had a lot of stuff crazy last year that was not helpful.
And whatever they pass, that same exact language has to be passed again in the next General Assembly session after an election in the House of Delegates. So whatever language comes out is what you will see them voting on again in the next General Assembly session.
Exactly. So that's extremely helpful. But I thought we should talk about, one of the big mic drop moments when we were watching the House debates was when Delegate Mark Earley, actually called this amendment one of the most extreme and ideologically driven in the nation. So let's just listen to that clip for a minute.
I can only come away with one impression, which is that this is among the most extreme and ideologically driven constitutional amendments among any that have been proposed in the nation. There are a myriad of reasons to oppose this resolution, and there's so many things that we could talk about. We could talk about how, despite the answers we heard, this resolution absolutely obliterates parental rights, hook, line, and sinker. It would supersede any state law we have, and it includes minors, and it absolutely would get rid of parental consent and parental notification. Any lawyer or anybody who's ever been in a court knows how easy it is to make these arguments, and given this language, that's a slam dunk. So if you wanted to cut parents out of the process, if you wanted to cut parents out of one of the most important decisions that a young woman could possibly face, this amendment would be the way to do it.
So Todd, why don't you help explain to folks, why are we saying this is so extreme? What are some of the things that make this so extreme?
Yeah, and he's right on point. I mean, first of all, this amendment, the language states that it's open to any individual. So right there alone, that includes minors, any interpretation. And so any lawyer or judge is going to have to look at this language and say that this does include minors. So that means any type of parental consent laws that we have in place, out the window. Yeah. There's also some language in there regarding who can perform abortions, when, the gestation period, as far as it makes it impossible really to have any safety standards for these facilities where the abortion is being performed, which endangers the life of so many women who do choose to go through this. We at least want to make sure that they're in a safe environment with proper protocols in place. This would eliminate all of that. Conscience right protections. I mean, the list goes on. I think the more we talk about it each and every day,
the more we find problematic.
Yes,
I have felt that. It does seem like every time you look at the language, you see something new. I've been concerned about sort of the liability issue. So they basically say, in this constitutional amendment, anybody that assists or in any way is involved with this abortion that a woman has this theoretical reproductive freedom to go get, they can't be held liable. So I worry about, we're creating an industry, not just the facility is unregulated, which is what we have, but literally the doctor or the non-doctor, because as we know, this doesn't even just apply to doctors, they're not even going to be held responsible if something goes wrong. I mean, in her exercise of her supposed reproductive freedom.
Right. And the same language also says that if you interfere in any way, whether directly or indirectly, then you would be in trouble. I mean, the law is going to come after you. So that means if you're just standing outside praying at some of these abortion clinics, you could be prosecuted. And so this is very dangerous when we're talking about the facilitation of these abortions and these procedures. You're opening the door up to more sex trafficking. I mean, again, the list goes on.
I think the bottom line is apparently 35,000 abortions a year and 6 new clinics in the last 5 or 6 years. Apparently that's not enough. So, I mean, that's sort of the bottom line. It's not enough for the abortion industry. And I will say this, though, this isn't just about people who share the beliefs like you and I do, right? This is even pro-choice individuals, even more moderate individuals are going to see things in here. I mean, unless you are lockstep with the abortion industry and you want them to take advantage of vulnerable women and you're fine with all the profit and you don't care how it goes down, and then there's nobody that lands all the way over there. You're going to find something wrong with this amendment if you're honest with yourself about what's in here. And so it was interesting to see on the floor of the House, just sort of talking about this moderate, that this isn't just, radical pro-lifers that aren't going to like this. I was pleased to see, Delegate Carrie Coyner, who is not with us on every issue. I was pleased to see her get up and actually give objection to this. Yeah,
a very heartfelt response to it in comments. She became very emotional in that moment, and she raised some really good points. I mean, this puts minors in a position where they can be having these procedures. Something bad could happen, and parents may never know about it, all because of this right that this amendment, this resolution would create.
Yeah, I think so. Let's just play a clip of that.
I am required to be present for every single one of my children's doctor's appointments today, for everything from as mundane as a cold to annual routine physicals to play in school sports. Yet this amendment would allow my daughter and countless others like her to make a decision that could change the course of her life without ever consulting me.
The point she's raising, any parent can relate to. We've all dealt with the things that we have to be involved with by either school requirement, medical requirement, the law. Like, we can't abdicate our responsibility in a whole bunch of areas. The kid, I think about, I have a 17-year-old. He can't go to the doctor, my doctor, by himself, actually. Mm-hmm. But then when they want to talk to him about, sex or contraception, then they want me to leave the room. It's this ridiculous thing where this is the only category where we want to treat these kids like adults, and that we're going to say the parent can't be engaged. And these young girls, the best thing in the world, no matter what they're going to do, is that they do it alongside a parent, and a parent is literally helping them understand the gravity of the long-term consequence of taking a human life and what that will do for her own life as she moves forward.
That's a good point, because we see legislation this year that would put in some stronger age protections regarding gambling. Regarding tobacco, access to tobacco products. But yet in this situation, in this moment, like you pointed out, if it's an abortion, well, age doesn't matter. We got to make sure that they can obtain it and the parents are not involved in it. And it is a very dangerous scenario to project. So.
No question. We could talk about this, and I guarantee you we will be talking about this on this podcast and everywhere else for quite some time. But let me just encourage our folks, if you're watching this right now, listening, go to our website, familyfoundation.org. We've got a banner that's real easy to click on that just kind of gets you to the details about this amendment, the process, all of the things, what are some of the objections. So that's just a great place. And then I of course, have to make a plug for when you as an individual can come share your support. One of the best things that you can do is really already block off April 2nd on your calendar. We're going to have the March for Life, and it's always a great event, but it's going to be an even more important event this year. Yeah,
we're expecting a lot of people to show up, and it is encouraging too, especially for us who are down there all the time. When we see so many pro-life people, families, kids, it's fun. You're walking, you're meeting people. It really is. It's encouraging for everyone. You're not alone. And on that day, you will see thousands of people come out, and you will realize that.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that it's fun, because I do think that is a big part of it. And truly, in the middle of this hard stuff, there are some fun moments. We had another fun moment on a different issue this week where actually we had a press conference with the three statewide leaders of our Commonwealth, the governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, and they were taking a strong stance on saving girls' sports. Yeah. But what was super fun about it is they brought in one of our favorite rock stars in this movement. Riley Gaines actually came into town, and so that was pretty awesome. And all of the statewide did just such an excellent job speaking to the bill. So I thought we'd play a clip. I mean, we could play a clip from any one of them. It's actually Attorney General Jason Miyares that put this all together. As you know, he's been involved not just on the legislative side, but he actually was one of the attorney generals leading a whole group of attorney generals countering Biden's misinterpretation of Title IX. So he's been on this issue. But anyway, let's hear a clip from one of the things that Winsome said. Let's go ahead and hear Winsome at this press conference.
We are not breaking the glass ceiling for women only to repair them behind us. We need to make sure that women's sports are for women.
All right, I just love Winsome's comment here that she, has been part of breaking the glass ceiling because, of course, she's our first female lieutenant governor in Virginia. But she's just saying, look, we don't want to go backwards. Like, I've had to kind of be part of pushing my, she's a Marine. I'm sure there were, she talks about that. I mean, she stands as sort of this amazing role model for young girls. And she's sitting here thinking, and yet we're allowing in our Commonwealth boys to come in and steal their awards and their scholarships.
Yeah, and so the bill was heard on the Senate side in committee, and I was proud of one of our team members who went up there and spoke and really pointed to the young kids, the young girls who, maybe they're not going to the collegiate level, but this is a place where they get to build memories and friends, and you rob them of that if you let a biological male compete on that team and take their place. And I thought it was a great message. I mean, some of these young girls just want to compete, enjoy, and they don't want to have their position or their spot taken by a biological male.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question, and I think, of course, Riley has done a great job talking about that around the country. And it's fun because she referenced in her speech, she referenced that the first time she ever spoke in a legislature was when we brought her in 2 years ago when we kicked off this bill. I mean, you think of her as everywhere. She was just at the U.S. Capitol on this issue. But actually, she was talking about like how nervous she was in front of our house. I mean, I can remember the day as clear as can be because the Democrats were terrible to her. I mean, the people, they were, it's not a problem. And she's standing here. I mean, they're literally trying to pretend this isn't a real issue. And I still get that. I had a reporter right after this press conference basically say like, VSHL, it's a sports league, did I get that right? Whatever.
Yeah, the Virginia High School League. Yeah.
Whatever it is. He was saying, like, they haven't had that many applications and they've denied some. Yeah. And, he's trying to make it sound like it doesn't. I was like, this is for every future girl. This isn't just what's happening in this moment. This is the reality of when you create this, you can't tell a boy he can't jump into a girl's space forevermore. The policy is, and it's not just about trans kids. It's also about kids that are taking advantage of an opportunity to get a scholarship.
How many times do we hear the other side say, well, we got to bring this bill because this might happen or your right might be stripped away? Well, we're now seeing evidence of it happen all around, even in Virginia. We had the swim team in Roanoke. We had in Hanover County.
And some of them were there, which is cool.
And so we're saying this is going to happen. Let's put something in place to protect them. And during the committee, we heard someone from the school from the teachers union step up and say, well, they don't want to make sure that trans students have an opportunity to play on sports. Well, they do. But what this bill says is you play in the sports team that aligns with your biological reality, your biological sex.
They're not boxed out from playing sports.
No, not at all. Nobody is doing that.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And so you heard it on the Senate side, and of course it didn't. It's not out of committee. It didn't.
Yeah, it didn't pass.
And then there's a House version that Delegate Dolores Oates is carrying, and what I'm hearing is that the Democrats might be doing what we sort of call a pocket veto, which is the bill is listed as pending committee decision. So basically a bill, when it gets put into the hopper, they then refer it to a committee. So it's immediately sitting in this case, it would be the Education Committee because it's affecting K-12 issues. And this bill is still pending a decision, which is a way that they have sometimes just literally not heard the bill, which tells me something. If that were to be the case, that they don't even give it a hearing, they don't want to vote on it.
No.
They know where the public is.
They do. And we do too, because we've done polling on that. And 80+% of the people.
They're on the wrong side of this. And they don't want to see this pass, but they also don't want to take the political hit, which is, it just tells you we're going to win this at some point. It's just a matter of whittling it down and working at it year after year. And I will say we also have one other obstacle we're up against. It's not just the partisan folks that are in the legislature, but it is also the news media. And we saw this come to light right after this press conference. So I think we have to put up on for our viewers this humorously illustrated, this point that I'm making is just so illustrated by the RTD Richmond Times-Dispatch, their reporting of this. So check out this line, which we're putting on the screen. It literally says, Virginia's top Republicans joined Wednesday to call on the General Assembly to keep transgender women who they call, quote, scare quotes, biological males out of women's sports. Literally, I think they want the whole world to think we're crazy because we're saying that we're keeping men out of girls' sports.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I got to mention here that in the committee, on the Senate side, when there was a bill that came up unrelated to the female sports, and Senator Peake asked, there was a pediatrician that came up, and it was dealing with physicals, sports physicals. And Senator Peake says, hey, let me ask you a question. When you do sports physical, do you determine if they're a biological male or a biological female? How do you determine that? And she says, yeah, we evaluate them from head to toe. And we note that in the file. So we know scientifically there is male and female. Yep. And the mere fact that they're putting in scare quotes biological males is just It's just so ridiculous.
Well, I loved the Attorney General's reaction to this. If you went out on X, you could see what he did. He basically took a picture of the headline, and we'll put it up here, and literally just crossed out the word trans and the WO, and instead of the title being GOP calls for ban on trans women in women's sports, it now, his fix of it, and he says, he wrote, fixed it, I got it. It's just GOP calls for a ban on men in women's sports. Because that's what it is. I mean, this sometimes this just gets so ridiculous. Anything else we should be highlighting? Any other?
Well, there's a big big thing going on with the homeschoolers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell everybody a little bit about that. It's not good, is what I hear.
No, it's not. So there has been legislation introduced in the Senate that would essentially undermine the religious exemption for homeschool families, of really taking away their religious protections, their religious liberty to educate their kids in the way that they see fit. And, we know in state law that we have a fundamental right to direct the health and education of their kids. And some do it according to their religious convictions. And this bill is trying to undermine that. And this particular senator has created a firestorm, I would say.
Well, and we had heard this was a move around the country. We've actually learned that this is sort of a strategy they had. So we were looking for this last year, and we were kind of glad it didn't show up like this last year, but here it is. So this is all an effort to shut down any alternatives to the public school system. So,
and I know that for a lot of homeschool families, the thought is, okay, if they come for this, then they're going to come for everything else, all the other options that they have for homeschool families or any other school choice. So this is a big issue, and we're asking families, especially if you're homeschool, to contact your legislator and let them know that you're opposed to Senate Bill 1031.
It's hard. We're just, in Virginia, I just sit here and think we're so behind other states on educational options in so many ways. We were kind of the birthplace of homeschooling in some ways, and we do have reasonable homeschooling laws, although, we've not been able to get the Tim Tebow bill passed where homeschoolers could just go ahead and try out for a public school team if they wanted to play sports or, so we're behind in so many ways. And it's like, instead of gaining ground, they're trying to push us even further backwards. And it's a frustration. And with that, I feel like I need to plug, we're going to have Mama Bear Day, which is one of our favorite action days, our activity, a chance for people to come down to the General Assembly and advocate for all these parental rights issues, many of which are education opportunities. And so Mama Bear Day is going to be February 4th. Yeah. So that's coming right up. And I would really encourage folks, and it's for Papa Bears too, so do not worry. We will take all of anyone that wants to come advocate for your kids. But if you don't know about that, you can find resources about that on our website as well at familyfoundation.org. But we're getting excited for that as well.
Yeah. That's and that again, I mentioned that about the March for Life. This is a fun day. You see parents, a lot of kids, and it's a positive day. You're going in and having good conversations with legislators. They love to see families most of the time, and they love to see kids, and they're very friendly. So if you have your child with you, if it's a day off, feel free to bring them with you.
Yes, absolutely.
It's a great day. Yeah.
And, I just will put this in one more time. I know I've said it here before, but our team goes in there and they're meeting with legislators. I mean, Todd is having hard conversations and trying to help folks understand the facts. But, it is so important that they actually see constituents from their own district. They need to know that voters, it's not just Todd, it's an army of people behind Todd that are going to actually vote them out of office when they do the wrong thing or that are going to support them and have their back when they vote the right way. And sometimes they just need to visually see that. That's why we hold these days, is so that on the other days where it's just Todd in those conversations, they're seeing Todd, but they remember that you all were here. And that's really, and Grant and our whole team. I don't want to, we've got Jesse, we've got a lot of folks over there having these conversations, but I just want people to understand why that's so important and just to not sort of think, they got it. This is why I support the Family Foundation, that they handle it for me. Be a part of it. But this is really, our job is to facilitate your relationship with your legislator, because that's even more powerful than anything that comes from any organization. So I just throw that out there. And I think with that, we will probably wrap up, because we could be here all day talking about, there's a lot of other bills. We're going to have a lot of other shows to catch them up on all sorts of other things. But thank you for joining us. And don't forget to share the Speak Up Virginia playlist. That is a great way to help us, or the YouTube list. It's just a great way to help these broadcasts get further. When you like it, when you give a good review, it helps other people see that we're out there, and really we're just trying to build the army, build the folks that are willing to step up and say something. We want to give courage to people. So this podcast is just one of our little ways to do that. But with that, I guess we'll wrap it up for this week, and have a great week.